Our lives are the sum of our choices.
Hey everyone, my name is Prism, and welcome back to my Mission Impossible movie review. So, it is the day, guys. This evening, I will be going to the cinema watching Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, what is the so-called final installment in the Mission Impossible franchise. Of course, as some have said, until Tom Cruise feels like making another one. But I am really looking forward to this film. I am really looking forward to seeing what they pull off here. And, of course, I went ahead and watched Dead Reckoning Part 1. Because originally, it was a two-part film, and it's still one big story, but they removed the Part 1 and Part 2 title and just renamed Part 2 Final Reckoning. Anyways, I did skip Fallout. The reason I skipped Fallout is because I didn't want to burn my eyes out watching 5 hours of Mission Impossible today. But also because I figured it was more important to watch Dead Reckoning, especially because the person I was with wanted to watch one of the films with me, and I thought it would be more beneficial if they understood what was going on in Part 1 than in what was going on in Mission Impossible 6. I will watch a recap of Fallout so I get the plot, but yeah, for now, I just, watched Dead Reckoning. And I will say, this is a very interesting copy of Dead Reckoning, because it actually, well, you can see here, it's a different release than you are used to. I've seen different artwork for this one, and I don't know why the artwork is like this, but it's different. The way it's printed, the way it's organized. Yeah, I have no idea why. I thought this was a bootleg, but I checked it, and it looks pretty legit. There's a barcode on the disc. Maybe there's not a barcode. Yeah, anyways, I was just kind of surprised. But I got it off eBay, and it works. So, as far as I know, whatever. Not going to complain about the packaging. Besides, I want to get a Blu-ray copy, so I have the little behind-the-scenes documentary. I actually want to get a full set of the Mission Impossible films once the final one is out. Like a full series collection with, booklets and whatever. That'll be a little bit expensive, but I'm hoping to get that. We'll see what they announce. But yes, I saw Dead Reckoning last night in preparation, and I have quite a few thoughts. And I don't know that I'm going to get into spoilers in this one, because honestly, it's kind of hard to. I'll have some brief spoilers, but I'll put it like this. It's hard to make a final judgment on the movie until you know how it ends. Because this is a two-part story. I would say this, though. They end the film at a really good point. You can really feel like they cut the film in half at an appropriate spot. And it wasn't like, oh, we need to cut it in half while we're in the middle of editing it. No, it's very clearly, we were writing the script, we realized it was too long, so let's just make a good cutoff point. And, I think it works. The plot of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning is basically that this AI, the entity, has gone rogue, and that Ethan Hunt and his team need to go after it. But the messenger, Gabriel, is trying to get a hold of the entity to destroy the world. Pretty explained. But I put a lot of the film's faults, like, oh, the villain isn't well explained, or, oh, what's this? I put a lot of that on, this is only part 1, and they're just trying to get you engaged. Part 1 should really be about introducing the villain, and then part 2, you get a lot more of the character stuff. Though with that said, there is quite a bit of tragedy and stuff that happens in this film. There's a lot of sword fighting in this film. Not a lot, but there is a pretty good sequence on a bridge between the villain and specific members, which I'll talk about in spoilers. That's a pretty fun scene. I always love seeing sword fighting, and the train fight at the end of the film. That's a pretty cool fight scene. I really like the entirety of the cliff jump. And I know I may sound like I'm spoiling the stunts, but it's honestly kind of hard not to when they literally spoil them in the film trailers. It's a really, really cool stunt, and I do really like it, and I do think it is a big part of Dead Reckoning. I just kind of hope it doesn't spoil the stunt for the second part. I think the music, I think the editing, I'll say this. As someone who watched Rogue Nation and found the pacing to be very slow and almost like a burden, just very difficult to watch through, I found Dead Reckoning to fix that issue. And Dead Reckoning's way longer than Rogue Nation. So I don't think it's a runtime thing. I think it's just a matter of knowing how to pace things. I really did like Dead Reckoning a lot more. Honestly, I'd give this film, if I'm cutting it off here, well, let me add a few more things. Haley Atwell, I will say, is great as Grace. I like that she's in the film. I like her presence. Of course, another love interest for Ethan. Anyways, I do like that she's in the film. I do think that it's interesting that she's a thief, a pickpocket. And I do kind of love the opening sequence with her and Ethan and everything else in it. But I will really get into it in the spoiler section. Like I said, not going to be too many spoilers because I don't really want to give my full thoughts until I know how it ends, because I could say I love it in this part and then say I hate it in the second part, and that will dampen my view of things that started in part 1. So, with that said, let's get into full spoilers for Dead Reckoning. Alright, so for my spoilers of Final Reckoning, just a few little things at the beginning. I do really like the first act of the film. I totally see why some people would have a problem with it, because it is about 30 minutes until we get the opening credit sequence. And you definitely could have cut some things out. Like, the plot is a little bit redundant. It's basically like, oh, let's talk about this thing, then let's go to this location, then let's talk about this thing. There is a lot of exposition in this film, and I do admit that could have been cut down, and I am curious to see how Final Reckoning will deal with it. But I do enjoy the film still. Like, there was never a moment where I was bored out of my mind. I felt like there was just enough of setup to get you into the really exciting sequences. And in terms of exciting sequences, I love the entire sequence at the airport. I love how Luther and Benji are trying to stop the nuclear bomb. Ethan Hunt's playing cool with Grace, trying to get her to tell the truth and not steal the key. I really like a lot of that, and he's trying to outrun the agents. I really like a lot of that. I think it's a very, very fun sequence. I think it works on both of their strengths as actors. I think the whole thing being revealed that the AI knows who Benji is a very cool twist. And, there is, like I said, a little bit of the complaint that, the entity is kind of, not the best thing. Like, they could have done something different. They could have done something better. But I feel like for the final installments of Mission Impossible, if this is how far they're going to go, then go this far. I don't think there's an issue with doing a plot about AI, because it is a relevant issue, and I think it's kind of fun to put in Mission Impossible. And it is a very interesting issue. Like, if you destroy the entity, you can't really destroy AI. Like, someone else could just make another one. So I'm kind of curious how they're going to answer that. Like I said, the action in this film is amazing. They do kill off Ilsa Faust, which was brought up in Rogue Nation. She was introduced in that one. They kill her off during the bridge fight with Gabriel, where she basically sacrifices her life for Grace's. And I really like that fight scene. I really like just kind of how chaotic everything gets. I really love that the entity can start interacting with their intercoms. I'm sure that's going to cause some plot holes when it's like, well, why didn't it intervene with this? But they very much explain that, like, oh, we're on this type of network that the entity can't get to. So they do explain why in some cases the entity doesn't interact. And the entity only starts to interact, like Gabriel says, when it's fearful of Ethan Hunt winning the mission. And like I said, I think it's really cool that he starts imitating Benji's voice, because in reality that's a real issue. That AI can, take the likeness of someone and recreate it. I mean, sure, it doesn't sound the exact same, but it can trick people. And so I feel like it's a commentary on that kind of thing. But of course, I have to talk about the third act of the film, because there is a lot that goes on the second act, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's a lot of action. I I think really where the fun starts is the entirety of the third act final sequence. You have Tom Cruise literally jump off a cliff on a dirt bike. How much more fun can you have than that? And I was watching a video on the film's production, and they said that he did the stunt 6 times. That very much sounds like the Tom Cruise thing to do. The whole final train battle, the whole thing with Grace trying to get on the train and infiltrate, or pretend she's the White Widow so she can get the key deal, and then Kittredge is revealed at the end. And then there's the whole fight in between of Ethan versus Gabriel, and the question of, are you doing this for the mission, or are you doing this to get revenge? Not exactly that kind of question, but it's like Luther's almost questioning him, like, are you willing to do what it takes when the time comes? And yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's a very interesting sequence. It does go on a little bit long. I'll admit that it is a bit of a long sequence, the entire train back half of the film. But it is very, very enjoyable. It's a really fun film. And I think, you could trim some parts out of it, and some people already have in their fan edits. But, like, it's a fine film. I think for what Dead Reckoning is, it's a really fun movie. Sometimes it gets a little bit over the top. But it's a very, very fun film, and I think it puts a new spin on the whole AI concern, and I can't wait to see how they solve it in Final Reckoning. I'm really excited to see it this evening, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Sorry if this video is a little bit rushed, but I just want to get it out before I have class and before I go to see the movie, and I will surely be back either tonight or tomorrow to cover my thoughts. So, thank you guys for watching, I hope you all enjoyed, and bye for now!